Shabbat Shalom. What an interesting week we have coming up. This Saturday is February 29th. That's just fun to contemplate. All kinds of leap year complexities in trying to schedule birthday parties and lahavdil to observe yortzites. And then on Monday, March 2nd, Israelis go to the polls for a national election, the third time in 12 months. And there are many who say, hold on, by the time we get to mid-August of 2020, we'll probably have the fourth round of national elections. That, most assuredly, will not be fun. And then on Tuesday, March 3rd, we will encounter the Super Tuesday primary elections for the Democrat contestants for the presidency of the United States. And there are many who say that the strength of our American democracy is on the line this Tuesday. So these primaries also cannot be considered as fun. Interesting, yes, fun, not so much. Quite a challenging few days, so let's take refuge straight into our Sedra. TERUMAH, Exodus 25, beginning with verse 1 and following. We're going to be talking about a very important concept this week. The word is TZIMTZUM. The word literally means contraction, TZIMTZUM. So what is it called when is not becomes isn't? That's a contraction. A word or a phrase that is made smaller by omitting a letter or a sound. And what is it called when a woman is ready to give birth and feels muscles in her uterus tightening and growing shorter and then relaxing? Contractions. Within the sphere of Jewish ethics, what is it called when an individual withdraws from the center of attention, refuses to become the main topic of concern, puts others ahead of themselves? Humility, of course, but also contraction. And what's it called when we read in Exodus 25:8, Va'asuli mikdash v'shachamti betocham, and let them make for me a sanctuary that I may dwell within them. An act of self-diminishing, an act of withdrawal into oneself, a TZIMTZUM, a contraction, but here carried out by God. Moses is still atop Mount Sinai receiving the Torah. It takes a long time. 2 weeks ago, the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments, were read, enumerated for our study. Then last week, we read of a vast array of commandments dealing with how we should live and how we should conduct ourselves in relationships with others. And now this week, we are getting to the required nature, the shape, the sizes, the materials of the tabernacle and of the ark and of a wide array of sacred vessels. Soon enough, we will read of the precise nature of the priestly garments, and when we get to the book of Leviticus, we will happily encounter the minutiae of sacrifices. I want to focus on what is considered to be really the most memorable phrase in our Sedra. Let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. The Hebrew word v'shachanti literally means, and I will dwell. God is saying to Moses that it's possible for God to inhabit an earthly structure. If humans build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, according to exact instructions, that Mishkan can, when God wills, house the presence of God. If we build it, God will come. God, the infinite creator, God whose very existence preceded creation, God whose glory, we are told, fills the entire earth, Molocho haaretz kavodo, that God can take up residence within a humanly constructed sanctuary. Because such a notion is rife with contradictions and adorned with confusions and suffused with implied messages, our teachers have been wrestling with it ever since. the Kabbalists will take the notion of TZIMTZUM and use it to describe the very basis of creation. How do we understand the presence of the finite in an infinite universe? How do we understand the imperfect in the presence of perfection? How did this happen? Huge question. The Kabbalah, in the beginning, there was plenum. All that there was God. God wanted, for reasons only God could understand, to bring the physical universe into being. And with that universe, us. But where? All was God, and God was all. So God performed an act of TZIMTZUM, of self-contraction. And now there was a place of no God, vacuum. And it was in that vacuum that our physical world and we ourselves came into being, TZIMTZUM, from the Kabbalah. To a certain degree, the building of the tabernacle described in our Sedra was actually going to reverse the TZIMTZUM of creation. Moses was told to build a physical structure, a structure that would be empty. But then, at times to be determined only by God, God would insert the divine self back into the created world and temporarily dwell in the midst of the Israelites. Reversal of creation. Rabbi Shai Held wants us to consider two very contradictory questions. How can there be a world separate from God, while at the same time, how can God be intensely present in our world and our own words? How can TZIMTZUM yield two very different outcomes? A huge contradiction. And maybe that same contradiction is found within the human desire to feel our own power of free will, to know that we have some degree of control in a world that is claimed to be governed by an all-powerful, all-knowing God. Now, without jumping through numberless hoops and going backwards and forwards through those hoops, which, by the way, is how far too many philosophers of religion grapple with this conundrum, let's just ask, how is God both present and controlling? And how is God absent and making room for us all at the same time? Okay, so we're going to jump through maybe just a couple of hoops. I promise, not much. Here it is. God is all-powerful, but sometimes chooses not to use that power. Okay. Or God is all-knowing, but God's knowing is not like our knowing. Okay? Or God can know that something is definitely going to happen, but that knowing isn't responsible for making what God knows is going to happen, in fact, to happen. Oops, another hoop. Or the omnipotent God restrains the divine self and thus allows us moral and ethical freedom. Oof. All of that wants to claim that God can be radically present, but yet radically absent at the very same time, so as to leave room for us, for God's creatures, to reach their own moral potential. Private question. Is your head spinning? Mine is. But maybe, just maybe, a little head spinning is worth the discomfort. Held references Martin Buber's notion, fascinating, I like this, that before there can be true relationship, there must be true distance. Before I can be truly, in a Buberian sense, open to you before I can transcend my usual behavior, utilizing others as instruments of my needs. Apologies. I must encounter the other as truly apart from myself, as being not me. The other is not me, as being full and complete without me. And then I can be open to fully encounter the other. So maybe TZIMTZUM is the same kind of, shall I call it, two-step dance. God must first be radically other, apart from us, because only then can we act to make God radically present. Only once God is established as the supreme creator, far distant, can we build a tabernacle within which God can dwell. TZIMTZUM and creation. Creation and TZIMTZUM, totally separate, infinitely distant from each other, so that we can be totally present to God. God is not us. God is absolutely other than us. God is absolutely free of any control by us. Watch how we pray from now on. So we can build a physical tabernacle and assert that God dwells within it. Only a God that is absolutely other can become the God who is indwelling. Or even better, and I think absolutely clearer, we can make ourselves into those tabernacles and work to invite God to dwell within us. To be infinitely distant from God so that God can be present within us. To recognize our absolute otherness from all other human beings, just so that we can be open to their presence. Making space so that we can overcome space. Well, that's a lot of hoops to jump through today, even though I promised only a few. No more hoops. Have a wonderful Shabbat. Have fun juggling antinomies. You're not allowed to build a tabernacle on Shabbat, so maybe beginning Sunday, we can start building tabernacles of ourselves and invite God to enter. Could be. Have a wonderful Shabbat, my friends.